We didn't grow the collection to start the museum. We started the museum for the purpose of sharing the collection because we drive the cars, we use the cars, we want everybody to experience the cars in person on the street, and they date back from 1886 all the way through 2021. So the collection is encyclopedic in nature, and it's designed to tell the story of history, luxury, and sport, as cars have for the last 125 years. Well, when I was a young man, and I mean young, like 11, 12, my brothers, I had two older brothers, and we spent a lot of time just pouring through car magazines and reading about what was available in the marketplace. And this was back in the 70s, and it was every muscle car, 426 Hemis, Camaros, AMXs. It was a time when Mark Donahue, Mario Andretti, Jackie Stewart, Jackie X kind of ruled the world, and it was every genre of automobile. And our history, our memory was of my father telling us about the days when he drove in a Packard and when he drove in a real car like an old Cadillac. So it began at a very young age, and the love and the detail of the cars and the massive performance change between the 50s and then into the 80s and then into the 90s was extraordinary, and we were part of that because we could see cars that were pulling 10-second quarter miles, 11-second quarter miles that we thought was impossible and unheard of when we were children, now on the street. And then the quality of the builds became vastly different. So if you remember the Porsches and the Ferraris, not so much the Porsches, but really the Ferraris from the early days, where if you got a hot day, a lot of the laminates would pull off the dashboard, and before you go driving, you would just stick them all back up again. And it was a lot of fun, and it stuck with us. It was part of family, it was part of our community, it was part of what we did with our friends, autocrossing, and doing amazing things through Pennsylvania and New York, and just enjoying driving. Well, the collection was an idea that a few of the partners came up with, and we decided to really expand. We had collected maybe 30 cars or 40 cars, and we realized that we were collecting cars at a very fast rate, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen a year, and they were starting to expand the genre from just 50s and 60s and then modern Ferraris, Porsches, Lamborghinis, and things of that sort. We started to become much more encyclopedic, and really one of the things that drove me was my wife's interest in the pre-war cars, the brass cars, and they were such a beautiful form of art. The old motorcycles, the old cars, they were kinetic art, and so our collection started to migrate both backwards from the 50s, 60s, back into the 40s, 30s, 20s, then the teens, and then we started moving back into steam and electric cars from the turn of the century. And the level of development and the level of detail that went into making those cars was super exciting to us. And the community we met, the people in the hobby, were incredibly interesting, and it became a great way to meet people, and became a great way to spend time together as a couple. And our children luckily followed us into it, and so did the partners' children. So we then built a museum to allow for educational programs for children, for the development of the 30 under 30 programs, and to really celebrate Newport's history, luxury, and sport legacy of the America's Cup, tennis, auto racing, and everything that went along with it. So it was a wonderful experience to build the museum. We had no idea how much work it was going to be. And today it's a multifaceted business with a digital media presence, as well as with COVID, as well as a limited museum presence that rotates and changes all the time. And then we have our tours, and we have the concourse, and we've now launched a magazine called Linkage. So it's become a full bandwidth museum and educational program for children, adults, and seniors. Well, the Porsche behind me is very important. It's not my fastest car. It's not my greatest car. It's not the rarest car, but it's the car that I drove when my wife and I dated back in 1981, and we were married. Right after that, we were engaged. And on weekends, every weekend, we would, when I got home from work on a Friday, we would get in the car and drive through Bucks County, or drive to Easton, or drive up through Pennsylvania out to Berks County, and just go out and drive. It was red, and it kind of smelled like a Porsche, and it had cocoa mats, and it was just a great experience. And we spent so much time in that car together. When I had the opportunity to buy this car, it just reminded me of it. It's green, obviously not red, and it had the same smells and feels, and it took a lot of work to get it just right. It's probably a little better than it was when it was new from a mechanical standpoint. But the inside, the outside, it's in good shape. It's not perfect, and it looks a lot better today than it looked a year ago, 6 months ago. You've done an amazing job making it look like the car I love again. But it's a car we enjoy. It's a car we use all the time. And people ask me, why do you drive that car? And the simple reason is I love it. I love driving it. I love the way it feels. It connects me to the road. And most people drive a car because it connects them to the past. And it does that for me.